Hey guys, my name is Francisco Hernandez, and today I'm doing another episode in my Building the Shot series, which is a series that I started to basically break down everything that I can about how a single photo of mine was taken. In today's video, I'm going to go over this shot right here of Melanie that I took at a photo shoot that I did with my friend Joe. Before I continue, I do want to let you guys know that this video is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people alike. Explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity with Skillshare. Skillshare offers creative classes designed for real life and all the circumstances that come with it. These lessons can help you stay inspired, express yourself, and introduce you to a community of millions. As photographers, we're always looking to improve our skills, and Skillshare has a lot of different classes that can help you do that. They have classes on the basics of photography in case you need a refresher. They have classes on lighting in case you want to learn more about that. And they also have classes on graphic design in case you want to maybe design your own logo. I've been doing my best to learn more about other styles of photography, so one class I was looking into recently is called Lifestyle Photography, Capturing Inspiring Visual Stories by Mark Marie Forsberg. It was interesting because a section in that class is called Finding the Story, and that's something that I definitely want to work on and improve on. Skillshare was created specifically for learning, so there's never any ads, and they're always launching new premium classes, so you can stay focused and follow where your creativity takes you. At less than $10 a month for an annual subscription, it's not expensive at all. And if you guys are really interested in trying it out, the first 1,000 people to use the link in the description will get a 2-month free trial of premium membership so you can explore your creativity. If you aren't already following me on Instagram, I highly recommend you do. I try to make everything on my Instagram educational. Every post has all the XF data and the lighting information behind the scenes. I share a lot of behind the scenes video material on my Instagram stories. And recently, I've also started to make Instagram tutorials where I basically do my best to do what I'm doing right now, explain how a single shot was taken, and even edit it and show you guys all the editing information as well. I actually made a tutorial on this shot here for my Instagram stories, so you guys can check that out in the highlights. As always, I wanna break down the gear that I use and why I used it. So the first thing I wanna go over is the camera and the lens. The camera that I used was a Sony a7R III. I've been using that camera mainly because I'm using an ND filter that only works for that camera. So I've been using that, even though I do have the a7R IV. And the lens that I'm using is the Sigma Art 35 f1.2. I have that one on rental, and I actually extended that rental because I've been loving this lens way too much. As I just mentioned right now, I am using an ND filter lately, but in this specific shot that I'm going to be going over today, I didn't use that ND filter, but I just wanted to explain why I didn't use something else. It was just a matter of convenience and what I was shooting with. As for the lighting, I used the Godox AD300 Pro as the main light, modified with a 48-inch glow octobox. The rim light was the Godox 8600 BM, modified with a 35-inch Glow Grand Parabox Pro. A lot of you guys have been asking me why I use the Godox 8600 BM as the rim light and not the main light, because it is stronger, and there's no technical reason for doing that. That light setup was already at the end of the dock, or whatever you want to call it, and I was getting ready for a 2-light setup while they were shooting, my friends. So I decided to just set up my light, and then it was just more convenient to have that one already there at the back and use mine as the main light. Actually, when it comes to the lighting, one thing that I would have changed if I could was to add a grid to that rim light, because it just spilled a little bit too much onto the wooden dock area around the model Melanie. So if I could change one thing, I would add that grid, because in post and editing, I thought that the light was a little too strong, the highlights on the wood, and it was a bit distracting. So you guys will see exactly what I mean when I show you guys the editing. Okay, so now that you guys know the gear and the lighting, I want to show you guys exactly what I was taking, the straight out of camera shots, and I'm going to start in Lightroom with this shot right here. So with this shot, you can see that she's a little too dark here. You can see that the rim light is somewhere where I would want it to be. I actually like it exactly how it is, but the power on the main light needs to be increased because it's a little too low. A lot of you guys ask me, how do I determine the light output? Whenever it's a brighter condition, whenever it's really sunny, I'll tend to start at a higher output, maybe half power, maybe full power. And the opposite is the same thing. When I work in less intense conditions like late afternoon, blue hour, or night, I'll start at a low output and then I'll build up. And it doesn't take longer than a minute, less than a minute actually. So that's why I don't really use a light meter, because again, when I was starting out, light meters were expensive, and now that I use high-speed sync and still use high-speed sync to this day, the light meters are even more expensive. I do want to show you guys the straight out of camera. This is actually with some adjustments made. So I'm going to go ahead and take off the adjustments. This is exactly how it looked like straight out of camera. I've repeated this before in other videos, but I do have my brightness too high on my a7R III and all the other Sony cameras that I have. But the reason why I do that is so I can actually see the image on the back of the screen when I'm taking them in bright conditions. So because of that extra brightness on the screen, it looks like it's fine, But when I bring it to Lightroom like this, it's actually a little bit underexposed, maybe even a full stop. So I do that intentionally now because I want to kind of give that little bit of extra protection to the highlights, not clip them, not overexpose them. So I don't mind this false reading whenever I take a shot because I know that I can just bring it up a stop, and I'm shooting at low ISOs already, so I'm fine with the little bit of noise that might show up. But as I said before, the main light is too strong, so the next thing I do is raise the power. During this kind of adjustments of the lights, I don't really focus too much on the pose or expression or anything. I'm just trying to nail the lighting down. So here's the next shot. So here's that next shot that I just mentioned, and you can see that the power is a little bit brighter. I'm gonna go and switch to the last shot. And then this shot, you can see it's definitely brighter on her face. That's because I raised the power. I wanna say that I was at 1/128th on the 300, and then I brought it up to 1/64th, and then eventually I changed it to the power that I did have it on, which is 1/16th. Unfortunately, right now I'm having to go based off of memory, but I wanna kind of correct myself. I think in the last shot, I was at 1/128th, and then this shot, I brought it up 2 stops brighter to 1/32nd, and then that next one is when I brought it up just 1 more stop to 1/16th, which is exactly the shot that you're seeing right here. Sometimes in order to remember the power outputs of the light to share with you guys, I do take pictures of the power readings with my phone, so you guys can see that on the screen right now. It's just something I do so that I can actually remember the details of the lighting. At this point, I don't really have to focus on the lighting anymore because it's exactly where I want it to be, and I can focus now on other things like composition, pose, and expression. So that's exactly what I do in the next series of shots that I'm about to show you. From this current shot to the next one, you can see that the only thing I really did was ask her to smile. I did maybe adjust my pose to be a little bit at a lower angle, so that's why you can see more of the wooden area in the distance behind this wooden area in the foreground here. You can see a little bit more of it starting to creep up on the bottom right there. I do correct this because I don't want to see it anymore in the next couple shots, so I just want to let you guys know that. But again, only thing different is just asking her to smile. But after I took this shot, I did raise the power just a tad bit. I raised it maybe a third or maybe 2/3 of a stop as the main light. The rim light is unchanged, and I do kind of get at a wider kind of shot, just a different composition, seeing if I like that. And I end up not really liking that, so I adjust that again. So again, previous shot, still the same thing, smile, but I do change my composition and raise the power just a little bit. Once I took this shot, I realized that her pose could be adjusted in terms of the chin. Right now, the chin is a little bit low, so when the light is hitting from the top here, I think I could probably demonstrate it here, but there, you start to get a little bit more shadows on the eyes and a little bit in no catch lights and in the eye. So I wanted to get that, so I asked her to raise her chin. So that's exactly the only thing that I did, was just ask her to raise that chin, and it's pretty much the same shot. But after I took this one, again, I'm always constantly worrying about little things that I want to adjust. And in this shot here, I felt like her arm was a little bit too straight, and I usually want to have a little bit of a bend in the arm. So I asked her to just go ahead and bring that arm, slide it back to her, and then I get this shot right here. And I also, of course, changed my composition just a little bit because I was trying to figure out how exactly I want that composition to be. But once I took this shot here, I figured that, again, that wooden area in the back is just a little bit too dark and it's distracting from the image. It feels like it's just something that just pulls away the attention to the subject. So I went ahead and just corrected that in the very next shot. And I also asked her to go ahead and just go back from smiling to serious because I felt like her serious expression was just better. So that's exactly what I do in this next shot here. And this is the one that I ended up really, really liking. Up until this point, I did show you guys all these shots, but not straight out of camera. I think I may have showed you the first one straight out of camera. So I want to go ahead and just show you guys those again because I want to be very transparent about how they looked. So this is the very first shot, the test shot. And then the third shot, I believe, is the one where I liked the lighting. So this is the before, and then this is the after. And then I'll go to this final image that I'm going to be talking more about, the before and the after. Someone did ask me how would the shot look like if I just exposed for this scene without any lighting, for just only natural light. I don't have a shot like that, but the closest I can do is take this shot here and raise the exposure up the max that I can get it at, which is 5 stops. But you can see it's very noisy and grainy, so it's not a good example, but it's the only thing I have to show you guys how the shot looks like with just natural light and how I would pretty much expose for this scene. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the adjustments that I made to the shot. I don't want to go over them in detail because I've already done that in other videos. So I will just throw them on the screen right now and explain a little bit about why I made that adjustment. But what I do want to show you guys right now in detail is the adjustment brush adjustments that I made. If you guys are not familiar with the adjustment brush in Lightroom, it's just basically a paintbrush where you can apply different effects. So I'll show you guys exactly what I mean. So over here on the ground, what I did was I lowered the exposure because I felt it was a little bit too bright. So I'm gonna go ahead and just delete that and show you guys how that looks like, and then undelete it or bring it back and show you guys. I also reduced the highlights on the wood. All that area in red that you're seeing on the screen right now, I felt like it was a little too bright, so I selectively painted that area and reduced the highlights about -70, and I also reduced the exposure 0.6. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete that. You can see that it's a very big change, and it's because of that brightness that I felt like was taking away attention to the subject, Melanie, so I wanted to go ahead and just reduce those highlights. One thing I did mention earlier is that I liked the water behind her in the shot, so what I wanted to do was go ahead and just bring that up a little bit and so you guys can see it a little bit more. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys everything in red that I adjusted, and all I did was I raised the highlights to 50. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys the before and then the after. It's just kind of a subtle adjustment, but it's one that is making a difference. And the next thing I did was also raise the exposure of just her selectively. So you guys can see on the side there, it's 0.4 of an exposure adjustment. Delete, and then bring it back so you guys can see exactly what I did. Just a little bit of extra oomph to her. I also raised the color and exposure of the eye selectively. And I also believe I darkened, or actually I raised the shadows in all that area here. So this is the before, and this is the after, and I'll go ahead and just zoom in on her face to show you guys the eyes. Again, everything that's red is what I adjusted, and again, it's only the eyes right here, so I want to show you guys the before and the after, or actually maybe the after and before. So here's the after, and here's the before. Before and after. And all the adjustments you can see that are on the side here, that's exactly what I did. Now I'm going to go ahead and move it into Photoshop and show you guys exactly what I did there. When it comes to Photoshop, I kind of think of it as a digital playground, and in terms of what I'm going to do first. So I don't really have an exact step-by-step process. I kind of go by feeling, but one thing I always do first is I always remove distractions from the image. So anything that could feel that would kind of pull away the attention from the subject is what I will remove. So I want to go ahead and just show you guys exactly that layer where I remove those distractions. So go ahead and just look at the screen, try to see how the image, and then see if you can spot the differences between this shot and this one here. So everything that I removed, I felt like was distracting. So that's why I called the layer distractions and removed them. And I removed them using different things like the clone stamp tool, spot removal tool, and the healing brush. So I removed the distractions, and then I went ahead and zoomed in on the face and removed the blemishes. Usually I'll do the color grading last as a final touch to the image, but for this specific shot, I felt like the blues weren't exactly where I wanted them to be. So I wanted to adjust those first. So that's why I have the color grading as the next thing that I did. This is the before, and then here's the after. And you guys might like the blues before, but this is the kind of mood that I was going for. A little bit subdued and not as rich in those kind of standard blue tones. After the color grading, I went ahead and just did my favorite thing, which is dodge and burn. I'll show you guys, this is the before on the screen, and then here's the after. I do have quite a bit layers of 4, which is usually 2, but I have 4 here. And I'll show you guys step by step exactly what I did. So here's the area of the bridge being darkened. Here's her being brightened, her being darkened in certain areas. And then I darkened the shirt because it felt like it was a little too bright. So that's everything I did in that layer, before and after. When it comes to dodge and burn, I try to do everything in those first layers, the dodge and the burn layers. But sometimes I'll feel like the face needs more attention, so I can focus on that. So I'll dodge and burn everything but the face, and that's exactly why I have a whole different section here for just the face dodge and burn. So I'll show you guys, this is the before on the screen, and then here's the after. Before, after. After doing dodge and burn, I felt like the image could be a little bit brighter, so I went ahead and just brightened it just a little bit using the curves adjustment layer, and just raised it up just a tiny bit. So here's the here's the before, here's the after. And I also did frequency separation. So I don't want to go ahead and explain what it is here, but basically you're separating the color and the texture of the image so that you can manipulate each of those more with more control. The only area that I adjusted really was the wrinkles in her shirt and a little bit of the texture on her face. I felt like it was a little too patchy in certain areas, specifically on her camera right chin or cheek. So I'm gonna show you guys, this is already the after, and then here's the before. Again, the before and the after. So I really felt like those wrinkles were just showing up too much, so I kind of just subdued them. I use the frequency separation sometimes as a basically as a virtual iron. So that's how I reduced the wrinkles on the shirt. Once frequency separation was done, I started to really focus on the image, and I felt like the lower half of the image was a little bit dark. So what I did was I made that area brighter. So here's the before and the after. Before and the after. And what this did was brighten the jeans, and it also raised those highlights and the exposure of the water behind her, which is what I was aiming for earlier. The very next thing I did was manipulate the colors just a little bit, add a little bit of saturation in certain areas that I felt like weren't as saturated as other areas. So what I mean by that is sometimes I feel like the hands are very saturated, but when it comes to the shoulder and this area here, they're not as saturated. And I believe that's what was going on in this shot here and another shot that I edited from this photo shoot. And it's always dependent on the skin tone of the model. I'm not gonna dive deeply into what I did, but I do wanna show you guys the before and after of the colors layer. I'm actually liking the colors right now, but here's what I did originally. Here's the after, here's the before, and the after. The very last adjustments that I made to this image was that I fixed the hair because I felt like there was a little bit of a gap between the hair and I wanted it to be more united. And then I also made the catch lights just a little bit brighter in the eye, so you guys can just focus on the eye here. Here's before I made the catch lights brighter, and then here's after right there. And then I just brightened the image a little bit more. And that's everything I did to this photo. Again, I do have this tutorial on my Instagram. It's a little bit more condensed so you guys can see exactly every setting that I made to it. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it helped you out. And I'll go ahead and see you guys in the very next video.